Yeah, so just to start it off, storytelling is never going to die because, the first thing to ever exist was a story, right? We all we grew up learning about the good book. It's a story. It's nothing but stories in that book that we are, taught about from day one, whether it's through your parents, your grandparents, whatever, in the story of God. And it's all a story, right? If somebody asks you, yo, what'd you do today? And you tell them that's a story. You know what I mean? What are we going to do later today? Yo, we're going to go here and we're going to go there. We got to do this. That's a story. So storytelling is never going to die. It's a part of us as human beings, regardless of whether we realize it or not. With me as a storyteller, in music, especially in hip hop, it may seem like storytelling is dwindling out, but it's up to us as writers, as creators, to continue to uplift that and make sure that it doesn't die out in this realm. It'll never die out overall, but in the music, to make sure that it's there. But it's not a job for the weary of the weak. When it comes to music, when it comes to hip hop, it's not a job for the weary of the weak. You really have to be one of them ones to be able to tell a story the right way. It's one thing to say musically, just strictly lyrically in hip hop, hey, I did this and we're doing that. Okay, cool. But to really be elite at storytelling is a whole different art, a different craft, and a different skill set. No matter how popular you are or are not, it's a whole different beast as far as the skill set. As far as with the book being based on the album, yeah, if you know, so I guess giving background, I don't know if a lot of people know about the album, because the album is why the book exists. So let's get to the album. So I came up with this idea to do an album about Snowfall. Anybody here is a Snowfall fan, or about the show. And I came with the idea to do the album. It's called The Mind of a Saint, and it's me rhyming from the view of Franklin Saint. So the entire time, there is no Skyzoo. You don't hear the name Skyzoo. You don't hear anything about Brooklyn. You don't hear anything. And it's the first time I ever did a project about that. If you know me, my music is Brooklyn, 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 and Brooklyn again. But the album is not about Skyzoo. It's not about Brooklyn. It's not about gentrification or any of the things that I always rhyme about. It's about, my name is Franklin Saint. I'm from South Central and I sell coke for the CIA, and I don't realize it until later. That's what the album's about. It's literally if Franklin from the show decided to go in the studio in 1986 and make an album talking about the things that he's going through, as opposed to everybody else's perspective and visions on what it's like. So it's told from one point of view, everything you know about the show, but explored and expanded on in ways that the show didn't do. So that's what the album's about. And if you know the story of why John Singleton, rest in peace, who created the show, why John Singleton named the character Franklin, was because of the character Franklin from Charlie Brown. Because in Charlie Brown, Franklin was the only African-American character. He was at the table. Everybody, all the white people was on the other side. Charlie Brown and Lucy and all was on there, and he was by himself. And the story of Franklin in Snowfall is that he kind of was a sore thumb in his neighborhood as the black kid who went to school in white neighborhoods and who was wise beyond his years and may have been the most intelligent person, at least book-wise, in his entire neighborhood in South Central, and kind of sticking out as a sore thumb, but being in the mix of all this, of the people he grew up with and was rubbing shoulders with. And I kind of had that same thing as far as when I was growing up, being from Brooklyn, being in the Sty. I never went to school in my neighborhood. If you know my music, I talk about it a lot. My parents wouldn't let me go to school in my neighborhood. Like, I always tell the story about how there was a school, it was an elementary school 2 blocks away from my crib that I played ball in every day, but I didn't go to school there. And I was like, why I can't go to school here? Why I can't go to school here? One day I was walking, this is kind of getting off subject, but not. One day I was walking to school in the morning, and there was, I was walking to the train to go to school. My school was in Manhattan, so it was like 35 minutes away on the train. And I'm walking by the school that I play ball in every day, and there's teddy bears and stuff and flowers tied up to the fence. And what happened was, the night before, there was a basketball game for that school, and you're talking about 12-year-olds, and one school beat the other, and the star player for that school got stabbed up and killed as retaliation for the game. And my parents was like, that's why you don't go to school in the neighborhood, and I was 12 years old, and that's when it clicked. Because when you're 12, you're just like, I don't want to take the train 30 minutes. I want to go to school with my friends right here. It's around the corner. Like, the math ain't mathing, you know what I mean? But then it was mathing, 100%. And so the similarities were there. I brought that up because of the Saint thing, where he never went to school in South Central. They made him go out in the valley and all that. So that's why we did the Charlie Brown thing, because the origin of why John Singleton named him Franklin was because of Franklin Armstrong in Charlie Brown.
Yes.
So
And I think that in doing so with this project, you know, you all get an opportunity to see the imagery, but it just jumps, like this is one of the images here. It just, that image just hits different with those characters being black and brown. And it's something that we don't often see. And even when we do see it, you know, at times in comic books and stuff, comic books have a certain style that they're drawn in, and this is like very simplistic, but it just hits you, and it has this visceral effect because a lot of us can identify with Charlie Brown and Peanuts.
First off, you know, using the Peanuts theme gives it the familiarity that we all know. On top of it, it kind of simplifies it a little bit, like you said, but it also adds an innocence to it. And if you're looking at the story of Saint and Snowfall and what him and Leon and Kev and all them was doing, whether that innocence is justified or not, it gives it that innocence of how you look at it and how you see it, and whether you want to buy into the innocence of, wait a minute, these MFers ain't innocent at all, because look at what they was doing. But then you look at why they was doing it and how they was put in that position and how they were forced into that position. You're like, well, maybe there is an innocence to it. So there's all this dichotomy and juxtaposition to it, and there's all these different layers to it. And I think that's what made it make sense for the Peanuts theme. But like I said, it came from when I had everybody submitting pieces. Everybody was sending me very serious pieces, and they were all beautiful, and they all went into this art gallery that I built when we did the art show in Atlanta. It all made it, and then I wanted one that kind of gave it a different spin. And I said, yo, do one as Charlie Brown. Like, pick one of the songs, make it like Charlie Brown because of the whole connection and the origin of Franklin being from Charlie Brown and then the show. And when he did the one, it was like, yo, that's crazy. That came out nuts. And then he was like, can I do more? And I was like, yeah, go for it. You know, I ain't gonna stop your pen. Go for it. You know.
First of all, y'all too quiet. I gotta give it up.
No, I listen. If they quiet, if they quiet, they listening. Nah, if they quiet, I could be looking around and seeing heads in their phone and a lot of beeping and doo-doo-doo. Nah, so if they quiet, that means they listen, comprehend. So I appreciate that.
In the spirit of creativity and the way that you create, just researching and doing the knowledge on who people are and getting to know Skyzoo, just on what you can find, you know, when you search people, and then also just talking with him, you know, for maybe a half hour to an hour over the last few days. I wouldn't be surprised if he was an astrophysicist or a chemist, or doing some other, because you can tell that he's an intelligent person. You can tell that he's an educated person, and you can tell that he's intentionally telling stories the way that he's telling to affect change in his community. So what I wanted to ask you was, how did we get Skyzoo, the storyteller and the MC, instead of Skyzoo at NASA or something? You know what I'm saying? Like,
purpose, and God put me here to do this. Like you said, it could have been a lot of other things, and it was this because God said, no, you're going to be a writer, you're going to be an MC. Whether I made music or not, I was going to be a writer in some capacity. Right? I started writing way before. I started rapping at 9, but I was writing at 5, 6 years old. Whenever I would get report cards in first grade, my highest grades would be in English. My highest grade, you know, I was a writer forever. Like when we would do the little school plays at 7, 8 years old, they would never let me dress up and be a character. And I would be pissed off as a little kid. They would say, no, you're going to be the narrator because you read so well. Yeah, and I hated it. But then I realized later what it was like I never got to dress up as one of the characters and do like I was pissed. Like I want to be a character. It was like, nah, Sky, you're the narrator. Like so I would be behind the curtain at 7 years old narrating the play. So I say this was God given. Musically, nobody in my family makes music. A lot of people have it in their bloodline, or like you talking about earlier how you draw and everything like that, and then you now your son draws. Bloodline, you know. For me, yeah, absolutely. For me, it wasn't that. No one in my family makes music. All they know about music is going to the store and buying it and turning the volume up. You know what I mean? So it's more proof that this was God given. Now my son is heavy into music. My son is 7 and he's already, you know, trumpet this, trumpet that, and Lee Morgan versus Miles Davis and Bill Withers. You know, like my son don't know who Sexy Red is. My son don't know who Gunna is. My son don't know who Future is. And as long as I can hold that, he won't. And that's no shade, no shot. But he's 7. You know what I mean? My son literally gets in the car every morning and wants to hear "So What" from Miles Davis, "Lovely Day" from Bill Withers, "The Gigolo" from Lee Morgan. We argue playfully who's better, Miles Davis or Lee Morgan. I'm like, your name is Miles because of Miles Davis. He's like, Dad, Lee Morgan's the best. You know what I mean? So it's an amazing argument. But just going back to it. So with the music, it's all God given. And when I was 9, I saw a video, and some of y'all may know. Most of y'all may not because of the age in the room, but it was a video by a dude named Chi Ali called Age Ain't Nothing But a Number.
Come on, man.
And that was what made me start rapping. The moment the video went off, when it came on, I was staring at the TV, and when it went off, I pointed to my mother. I said, "Mom, I want to do that. I want to do that," pointing at the TV. And she was like, "Then go do it." It's literally what she said. At 9, she was like, "Go do it."
Thank you,
And,
Mom.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mom.
that was it.
That's right.
And you know that was it from there, and I started rhyming right away. Like some people, you play with it. It's like, yeah, I do that a little bit. No, at 9, I thought I was getting a record deal. At 9, I thought it was a go. It was like, yo, this is gonna happen like tomorrow, you know. So yeah, that's how it started, and telling stories and being lyrical and being a lyricist and double entendre, that became my lane. Double meanings and this, that, and the third. And just for me, being an MC. In school, I was advanced placement English throughout the majority of my school years. So the way I write is because of school.
Yes.
The way I write is because of academia,
Yes.
you know, nothing else. Because I could easily be an MC doing whatever's going on the radio or doing this or that, or even doing what I'm doing, but on a different level.
Yep.
But the reason why I do it the way I do it is absolutely because of school.
And what I mentioned to you before, you know, yesterday as well was your work with music that is a direct reflection of jazz.
Yep.
And how you also, like, those are the, like, you rap over everything, but those are the ones that seem like it's just like it's a symbiosis. It's,
I'm a jazz head. I'm a jazz head.
That's what I was gonna ask you.
Absolutely.
So obviously.
Yeah. I'm a jazz head. You know, growing up, my pops would listen to jazz. In New York, we had a station called CD 101.9. They got rid of it, but that was the jazz station in New York. And when I was a kid, like 13, 14 years old, we'd be in the car, and he would turn that on, and I would flip the radio and turn it to Hot 97. And he would be like, "Hey, man, stop turning the radio." And I'll be like, I literally would say to him, I'll be like, "Yo, this music is stupid. It don't even have words." Because I was all about words. I was about words. Like, what are you saying? Like, did you hear Liquid Swords? Did you hear Cold World? I'm about words. Like, where's the words at, you know? And I mean, my pops, he jokes on me now about it because of this being my lane. He's always like, he used to say, "Man, this stupid music, you're gonna love it one day. You're gonna love this stupid music one day." And fast forward to, I was in college, and I remember seeing Mo Better Blues on like HBO one night randomly. And I'm a giant Spike Lee head. You know my music, I have a record called Spike Lee Was My Hero. Me and Spike Lee did the video together. He loved it. He reached out to me, and me and Spike became cool from that. This many years ago. But seeing Mo Better Blues as a young adult at like 19 years old in college, that's when the jazz thing hit. So I always say, like, you know, my pops threw the alley and then Spike yammed it home. You know what I mean? My pops started it, but I ain't respect it. And then Spike brought it home. And when I saw Mo Better Blues at 19, I was like, oh wow, I get it. And the next day I went and bought the CD of Kinda Blue and A Love Supreme, because that's what they played in the movie. So my intro to jazz started there. And now it's 1,000 pieces of vinyl. It's me being more into jazz than hip hop, even though I'm a rapper, I'm an MC. Me listening to more jazz than hip hop. It's my son hearing more jazz than hip hop in the car. It turned in. I'm a insane jazz head. My vinyl collection is 1,000 pieces, and 95% of it is jazz. You know what I mean? So that's gonna seep through in the music.
Makes sense.
So when I'm putting music together, it's like, all right, jazz samples and jazz energy, dirty corner store, Mobb Deep, Pete Rock, Primo drums, you know, Pharrell bass lines. It comes into all these different things with a jazz energy and synergy over top of it. And then with the majority of my music, when you listen to my albums, you'll hear trumpet on almost every song, and those are live trumpets. So whatever it is, if you send me a beat and we're putting a record together, I'm putting the record together on my end, I'm gonna call my trumpet player and have him come in and play live trumpet parts. And a lot of times I co-write or I write those trumpet arrangements. So I'll be like, yo, go like this. Like when you hit this part, go there, and then when you hit this part, absolutely. And I don't know how to write sheet music. I don't know how to read and write sheet music, but I know how to compose and produce on that element. So I'll arrange and write some of those trumpet arrangements. And I did an album a couple years ago in Italy. I went to Italy for a week and did this album called The Bluest Note with this band out there called Dumbo Station. Did the whole thing in Italy, and it's with a live jazz band, and I arranged like every piece. So I was like, yo, all right, on the drums, play like this. All right, cool, you got that. You on the bass, do this. Okay, bet. You on the trumpet, do this. You on the keys, let's do some Fender Rhodes and do it like this. So I was Quincy Jones in the whole thing, you know. And so yeah, long story longer, I'm a jazz head.
So what I got from that is Chi Ali gave you the spark.
Yep.
Moms put the battery in your back.
Yep.
Who threw the alley-oop?
My pops threw the alley.
Hip-hop influence on your art early on? Because I know a lot of times visual artists or fine artists will speak to having, graffiti or different type of art backgrounds that then pour into the fine art or the other visual art. So my question for you, similar to Sky, was, why are you creating like this? Why are you doing stuff like this that is inspired by music, by dope hip hop music?
Absolutely.
Why this and not like I'm sorry, I'm not gonna say nobody's name.
I know where you're going.
Insert MC name here, or whatever. Why is it that you're doing it like this, and what impact has hip hop had on you? And I won't say hip hop saved you, but has it been okay? So how has hip hop shown up for you and been a saving part of your life?
Yeah, there are a few places I can jump around with this, but I'll start with if I'm drawing, if I'm creating, it's photography, art, painting, drawing. That's my bread and butter. If I branch off into other different things too, I'm always listening to hip hop. Like it's just in the headphones, it's in the car. Like I'm listening to hip hop on the way to work, coming from work, and I listen to a lot of different things. But I think hip hop resonates the most with me. And I've had a conversation with Skyzoo. Skyzoo knows that he's like my all-time favorite MC, like hands down. So being able to do this project with him, it was like another level for me, making that transition from being a fan of his music, somebody that was studying his music, because I enjoy storytelling, not like I'm gonna go and rap, but like I enjoy the way he puts the music together. I understand that if I listen to one of his albums, like I'm gonna have to go back and listen a few times. And that's how I was able to curate the book, actually, because it wasn't me, I'm just drawing the album to draw the album. Like I actually had to curate based on his lyrics and based on the show too. And actually based the book, I mean, clearly because of the title, but like I could have like just gone back and watched the show. Yeah, I'll do a few more. And I chose not to really revisit the show because we had conversation. And I had asked him, like, when you were writing the album, did you go back and watch the show and everything? He was like, no, like I watched it, I lived it, and then I was able to produce this piece of work. So I wanted to play by those rules too. And I didn't really revisit the show. I revisited the album because like that's what I was referencing. I revisited the lyrics and I would text him. I was like, yo, like, did you mean this and this bar and this these lyrics over here? And was it referencing this character and this, that, and the third? He was like, yeah, like you got it. Like maybe add this and that and some of the images. But it was great to have that feeling of like, okay, I do have an understanding of the music. And then to add on to that, I only started watching Snowfall because of his music. I hadn't seen the show before that. Yeah, because I had interviewed him on the album for like a YouTube video because my wife and I have a company to support artists and stuff like that. And he was telling me about the show because like I listened to the album only having like passing knowledge on the show. I was like, all right, like all this stuff is like flowing over my head. So I went back to watch it after having conversations with him. So it was a lot of curation, like probably like 2 solid years of curating for this book because I'd have to pick out song lyrics that would match these images. Like if I would talk about this one real quick, he's talking to himself, and this one is actually not even from the song, it's from one of the interludes, but it actually relates back to the song. And I was like, this has to be one of the pages that's in the book because it reflects that struggle of Franklin being a kid and seeing himself, like he was really tripping in the episode. He was on drugs, but it's like he had a conversation with himself and he's calling himself out. It's like, you're not saving people, you're harming your community, you're destroying your community. So going back to what Skyzoo said about having like this whimsical Charles Schultz-esque style, it's like the innocence, but he's losing the innocence, and then he's calling himself out on it too.
Yes.
But like a ton of curation for the project. I really enjoyed making it. This piece was actually the first one I submitted.
The one up
Skyzoo
top.
was talking about the art show, but the aspect ratio of the piece, it was just that top part. So for the book, I kind of went back and forth. I was like, all right, how am I gonna add on to this? Because I didn't want to do something totally new because this was such a powerful piece.
Yes.
You know, Peanuts Thanksgiving, but also mixed with The Last Supper.
Yes.
Franklin being paranoid, Franklin being egotistical, Franklin like, okay, I did this myself. Like, you can't tell me anything. But really, everything's crumbling around him. And then if you're looking at the frame below him, it's the impact that he's causing on his community. And I don't even think the show showed enough of that for me. Like, I love the show. I absolutely love the show. But I really wanted to take that element in the book and showcase these different elements. And I added Crack is Whack and the Dare t-shirt after having conversation with Skyzoo. So being able to have conversations with the writer of the album and create this art book to go along with the album, like something else.
Yeah, because I didn't want, the biggest thing with me, especially doing something like this from the album and, you know, the book, you hear me talk about how my albums, as myself, as Skyzoo, are about gentrification, black fatherhood and in the city, or the album about, you know, the experience and the plight of black folk and just being the highs and lows and everything of being black that come with it and everything we've built and what's been done to us and what we've even done at times. These are all different themes of different albums I have throughout the course of my catalog. So then to do an album based on a drug show, kind of a coke rap album, it's like a very far turn and a stark turn from what my catalog and career has always been about. So for me, I was like, well, if I'm gonna do this because of the show, because of all that, there cannot be any glorification in it. There can't be, yo, we just bigging up, yo, we shooting shit up and pardon the little kids and babies in the room, but yo, we just shooting it up and, you know, making all this money and throwing coke in the air like LeBron powder and blah, blah, blah. Like, we can't do that. Like, I'm not personally going to do that because that's not how I move. That's not who I am. I'm about this. That's, you know what I'm saying? So that's not who I am. So if we're going to do it, there has to be a purpose to it. So it was always about the warning tale, the cautionary and all of that. So that even in the book, I wanted to make sure that was reflected. So like Raheem said, I wouldn't have said it because I'm not big on take credit, but like when he did the bottom piece, I was like, yo, we got to add like Crack is Whack. We got to add the Dare movement, regardless of what that was about and what really was behind curtains with the Dare movement. That's a whole different conversation. But
You see it's torn up.
exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You caught it.
Exactly. I know what it is, but at the same time, having that imagery and that being reflected in there, I was like, we have to add that. Because it can't look like celebration. It can't look like glorification. It has to be, this is what it is, but here's why. So those little elements, I was like, yo, we got to add this. We got to add that. You know what I mean? And he was like, yeah, let's do it. You know, so those types of things. So just piggyback on what you said.
I appreciate you saying that. And the other piece I want to talk about too is just when you had the album, and I'm listening to the album, like there are moments of violence, but it's not like the whole album is shootouts and all this other stuff. Like there was that in the show, but I really enjoyed that it was almost like tunnel vision. Like this is what Franklin sees, and here's the consequences of it. And we had conversations where it's like you created like this, I guess I'll say, use a DC Comics term, Elseworld scenario where it's like, okay, Franklin didn't do this in the show, but this could have happened. And I think I have the piece in here that I'm going to reference. This piece here. So this one, definitely one of my absolute favorites. Franklin's in the community. He meets the Nipsey Hussle family. You could definitely take that. I just want to say, like, hearing that track, I knew I had to illustrate this like a family portrait gone wrong, so to speak.
So this is off of one of the records on the album, Purity, off of the album. And all right, so background. So if you notice the show, Snowfall is 86, you know, South Central LA. literally South Central and Slauson and Crenshaw and all that. I'm not from there, I'm from New York, blah, 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 everybody knows that. So writing this story, I had to get into that world, but also what I wanted to do with the album, even though it's an album based on a fictional show, the show is based on realistic moments, times, energy, situations that happened to us as black folk in the 80s, and with this show specifically South Central LA. So I said, as a listener, how would I want to see the connection? So as a writer, I'm looking at it from the other side of the fence, and I'm like, how do I connect this where the show and reality are one? To make the listener who's listening to the album that's based on the show really dive all the way in. And the way to do that was, okay, I started doing the math. Well, in 86, you look at somebody like Nipsey Hussle, him and his brother, him and Black Sam, they're from South Central, Slauson, Crenshaw, and all that. 86, they would have been about 4 and 2 years old or something like that. So if Franklin was a real character, because he's based on the energy that was happening back then, he represents these things that were really happening. If Franklin was a real character in 86, that means when Nipsey and Black Sam were little kids, 3, 4 years old, whatever it may be, these are the guys, the Franklins of the world, who inspired them and influenced them. Essentially, if Franklin was real, he's the reason they grew up the way they did. People like him are the reason they grew up the way they did. So I came up with this idea of, what if Franklin is on Crenshaw and Slauson and he met a little kid, 2 little kids that are Nipsey and Black Sam and their father, Ermias. And that didn't happen in the show, but it was a way to make the show feel more like a reality. Because the energy of who Franklin is and what he represents in the show were things that were really happening, because the real Franklins and all those guys back in South Central were the reason why South Central turned into what it turned into, which is how Nipsey and them came up, which essentially is what took Nipsey out, right? If we're being real about it. So in the record, in the second verse, is how did I say, one day I met a brother, I don't remember how it goes off top. You gotta go listen to it. But in the record, I talk about, in the verse, I talk about, one day I met a brother named DeWitt on the corner of Crenshaw and Slauson with his kids, teaching them black pride and about all the shit he did. Open up the store. My name is Franklin. I own some properties all over town. And I admire the way that you give him your boys crowns. He said, man, I'm just doing my job, being encouraging. This is my son Sammy, and the little one is Ermias, blah, blah, blah. So what I did in the record, I couldn't say, yo, this is my son Nipsey, because Nipsey wasn't Nipsey in 86. He was Ermias. Yo, this is my son Black Sam. He wasn't Black Sam, he was Samuel. You know what I'm saying? So like, I had to hope that the listener did the math. I was like, man, I'm putting a lot on the listener. I'm really putting a lot on the listener to catch this. But if I said, yo, this is my son Nipsey, that's not believable. And 9 out of 10 writers would have done that, right? Because they would have said, yo, I gotta make it hit home. Now I gotta give some responsibility to the listener. And it worked, you know, when I posted it on the gram, like I posted a picture of, you know, the 3 of them as adults, like Nipsey and his brother and his father, with the song playing, and all the comments was like, holy shit, I get it. Like I had to assist a little bit, but I couldn't say Nipsey in the song because that would have been nuts. Like nobody called him Nipsey in 86, you know what I mean? But it was about making that a reality of like, because again, in 86, those are the guys that built the neighborhood, that raised little Ermias and little Sam, who became Black Sam and Nipsey, who went through the things they went through and became Crips and was outside in the jungle and getting busy, and then Nipsey got taken out. It's because of the Franklins of the world. We have to put the blame where it needs to be. That's the significance of this album, because no one else who would have attempted to do this would have done that. You know what I mean? Like, that's the moments of, okay, we're not glorifying this at all. We're not celebrating this at all. We're going to tell the reality of it, the truth of it. We're going to show all the sides of the fence, which goes to back what Raheem said. We have to add the violence. We have to even add the money. We have to add the fact that Franklin was like, yo, I got more money than God. We have to add those small celebratory moments of what comes with being in that life, the highs and the lows, right? We can't ignore the lows and we can't ignore the highs. We have to be honest with the depiction of it. And this was, like you said, one of those moments where this didn't happen in the story, but it damn sure could have because all of the pieces add up. And that's the difference of just making an album where I'm just telling the story of what happened in Snowfall, and you're like, well, I don't gotta listen to the album. I saw the show. Everything you telling me, I already know. No. This goes to a different place, and this expands and expounds on so many other ideas. Even like a record like Panthers and Powder, where I talk about Franklin growing up as a Black Panther, they touched on that twice in 2 different episodes, but it was very, very small.
Yeah.
They just showed that Alton, Franklin's pops, was a Black Panther, raised Franklin as a Panther as a kid, and then Franklin got away from that, obviously, when he got older and started selling coke. So it was like they touched on that slightly. Let's touch on that more. Let's grow that concept, and let's really talk about the duality of, okay, I grew up like this, now I'm doing this. It's damn sure a slap in the face of how I grew up, growing up under this type of energy, but here's why. And knowing that I came from that, but now I've chosen this path. And let's expound on that, and let's talk about that a little more. So that's the difference of why the album hits the way it does for people, because it takes what you know and shows you how much you may not have realized about the show, about the concept, which then turns into why the reality of it. Because the show was based on real events. If it was me making an album about a Marvel character, it's like, all right, well, that's just a story made up anyway. You know, but this is a show about something that really happened in this country. So let's expand on that and let's grow that more. So that's how it goes down with those 2 pieces and all that.
And Raheem, how is hip hop showing up for you in your life and creativity with the way that you now are creating, as well as not only creating your own art, but also creating opportunities for others, other artists, as well as for the community to be able to get the art?
Oh, definitely. So I think it all kind of starts from like my background as an educator. I was a special needs paraprofessional before I got into this art admin thing. And then even while I was a paraprofessional, like, you know, for years and years and years and years, just working one-to-one with a kid that was emotionally disturbed and being able to connect with him around video games and comics and kind of pour into him in that way. Like, I always loved working with kids. And I think I enjoy creating artwork that has a message. I mean, there are stuff in the book that isn't necessarily kid-friendly, but like if you're a teenager, a little older, whatever, you can get value out of it. I even thought of like creating like an edited version. Like, I didn't really want to dilute the content in the book, but when I create artwork, I do want it to be as accessible as possible. But going back to the hip-hop thing, hip-hop's, I think, in everything I do in one way, shape, or form, especially when I'm traveling. Story I shared with Skyzoo a while ago. I think in 2019, I went to Cuba for the first time, just because I wanted to go. I was like, I love to travel, photography, photojournalism, that sort of thing. And I was there for, I think, about like 2 weeks. And, you know, you go someplace for a while, like you might feel homesick and everything. And I wanted to make sure that I was able to connect with the local Cubans, do my photography thing, but also have a way to be grounded. And one of the ways I was able to do that was through hip hop. Like, I wake up every day, listen to hip hop, go do my thing, go connect with people, take photos, do video, do everything I need to do. And I think for the most part, I was listening to Skyzoo's album In Celebration of Us. And I think that led me on this pathway of using hip hop as an outlet to not only express myself as an artist, get inspired, but also take in somebody else's story. And then the fact that we've got this brotherhood that we have, where we're able to make these projects, and I'm able to listen to his music on a flight, going through customs, stuff like that, having these experiences. So like, I'll listen to certain tracks from his albums. It's like, okay, I was in Havana. I was, you know, at this cocktail bar. I was at a birthday party for this Cuban family and nobody spoke English. So like, I'm able to make those connections, which also connects back to the music. So hip hop is everywhere for me, and being able to engage in the Trinity Hip Hop Festival, and it's been like probably 10 years since I did anything with Trinity in this capacity. And then having this book, being able to get back to my cartooning roots, like, it's just like wild for me. Like, it's good to be back in this sense.
Yes. Well, thank you for being back with us. And sharing those. We didn't know you know, the Trinity International Hip Hop Fest is turning 19 years old this year. Make some noise, guys.
Perfect, man. All right. Yeah, pull up and bring them in. It's free. So. Yeah, let's do it. Okay.
Raheem, can I get you in with this one?
I got